In 1907, a Danish-born Queen of England made the single most expensive pet portrait commission in history. Not one portrait, not 10, but an entire Noah's Ark carved from precious stones by the most famous jeweler in the world. This is the story of how Queen Alexandra of the United Kingdom transformed from an aristocratically poor Danish princess into the woman who single-handedly made Russian luxury a cornerstone of British royal tradition. And it all started with one very spoiled fox terrier named Caesar. Welcome to 1907. Edward VII has been on the throne for 6 years, the British Empire is at its absolute peak, and the Edwardian era is in full swing. This is the age of luxury, innovation, and conspicuous consumption on a scale that would make modern billionaires blush. And at the center of this glittering world sits Queen Alexandra, a woman whose journey from Danish poverty to British opulence reads like the ultimate rags to riches story. But Alexandra didn't just adapt to wealth, she redefined what royal collecting could be. This is the woman who would commission what art historians now call the most comprehensive and valuable collection of decorative hardstone animal sculptures ever created. The Sandringham Commission of 1907 wasn't just an expensive royal whim. It was a cultural phenomenon that established new standards for artistic patronage and created a legacy that still dazzles visitors to royal palaces today. Our story begins not in the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace, but in a modest townhouse in Copenhagen called the Yellow Palace. Here in 1844, Princess Alexandra Caroline Marie Charlotte Louise Julia was born into what historians call aristocratic poverty. Alexandra's father, Christian IX of Denmark, was royal in name but decidedly middle class in means. The family had the titles and bloodlines, but they lived simply. No grand estates, no army of servants, no rooms full of priceless art as we all imagine royalty lives. Just a comfortable but modest royal household where the children were expected to make their own beds. But in 1863, everything changed. At 18, Alexandra married Albert Edward, the Prince of Wales, and future King Edward VII. She went from a 3-bedroom palace in Copenhagen to Marlborough House in London, Sandringham House in Norfolk, and access to the vast wealth of the British Empire. The transformation was staggering to say the least. Alexandra suddenly had an annual income that exceeded the entire Danish royal household budget. She had ladies-in-waiting, multiple residences, and access to the finest craftsmen and artists in the world. And her response to this newfound wealth? Well, she developed what her grandson later called legendary generosity and an apparently insatiable appetite for beautiful objects. But Alexandra's collecting wasn't random. Oh no, she had an eye for quality, a love of craftsmanship, and apparently zero understanding of budgets. Her royal comptroller, Sir Dighton Probyn, spent decades trying to manage her finances, a task that was like trying to control a benevolent hurricane armed with a massive checkbook. By the 1880s, Alexandra had already established herself as a patron of the finest decorative arts. She collected jewelry, porcelain, paintings, and furniture with the enthusiasm of someone making up for 18 years of modest living. But it wasn't until she discovered a certain Russian jeweler that her collecting truly reached the legendary status of today. You see, in the late 19th century, no name in luxury goods carried more prestige than Fabergé. Carl Fabergé had transformed his father's modest jewelry business into the most exclusive brand in the entire world, creating pieces so exquisite that European royalty competed just to own them. Fabergé didn't just make jewelry, he created miniature worlds. His famous Easter eggs contained entire clockwork scenes. His cigarette cases were works of art. His animal sculptures were so lifelike that visitors to his showrooms reportedly did double takes, expecting them to move. Alexandra first encountered Fabergé through her sister Dagmar, who had actually married into the Russian royal family and became the Empress Maria Feodorovna. Russian royalty were Fabergé's primary patrons, and Maria regularly sent her sister examples of this master's work. And the effect on Alexandra was immediate and permanent. She didn't just appreciate Fabergé's work, she became literally obsessed with it. By the 1890s, she was one of his most important clients outside of Russia, regularly commissioning pieces and giving Fabergé objects as gifts to his family and friends. But Alexandra's Fabergé collecting reached its peak with a single, rather spoiled pet. You see, in 1907, King Edward VII decided he wanted a portrait of his beloved fox terrier, Caesar. not a painting or photograph, a sculpture carved from precious stone by the world's greatest craftsman. You see, Caesar was no ordinary pet. He followed the king everywhere, attended state functions, and was probably, honestly, more photographed than most politicians of the time. Edward VII was utterly devoted to this dog, and he wanted Caesar immortalized by the best artist money could buy at the time. So Edward commissioned Fabergé to create a sculpture of Caesar, and the result was a masterpiece. Chalcedony carved with incredible precision, embellished with gold details, capturing not just Caesar's appearance, but also his personality. It was so successful that it sparked an idea that would literally create and shape art history. If one Fabergé animal was spectacular, Alexandra and Edward reasoned, imagine an entire collection. In 1907, they commissioned what would become known as the Sandringham Commission, hardstone sculptures of every animal on their Norfolk estate. And you see, we're not talking about a few pets here. Sandringham House was a working estate with farms, stables, kennels, and grounds that housed everything from prize-winning racehorses to domestic chickens, from exotic birds to common farm pigs. And Edward and Alexandra wanted every single one of them immortalized in precious stone. The logistics alone were absolutely staggering. Fabergé's craftsmen had to travel to Norfolk from Russia to study these animals, create detailed sketches and take measurements, then return to their workshops to begin the painstaking process of carving each creature from carefully selected stones. Each piece was a masterwork of artistic and technical skill. The royal collection includes Persimmon, Edward's famous racehorse, carved from brown chalcedony with incredible attention to anatomical detail. There's Basilica, Alexandra's champion bourgeois, rendered in silver with emerald eyes. Domestic animals like pigs, chickens, and sheep sit alongside exotic birds and wild creatures found on the estate. The commission took nearly 3 years to complete and cost a literal fortune. In today's money, we're talking about well over 2 million euros for what was essentially the world's most expensive pet portrait session. But the results were actually unprecedented. The largest and most comprehensive collection of Fabergé animal sculptures ever created. Alexandra was completely enchanted. She arranged and rearranged the collection constantly, created special display cases, and reportedly spent hours just admiring the craftsmanship itself. Visitors to Sandringham were given tours of what became known as the menagerie room, where dozens of precious stone animals created an indoor Noah's Ark. But the Sandringham Commission was more than just an expensive royal hobby. It represented the pinnacle of decorative art collaboration between British patronage and Russian craftsmanship. Alexandra had essentially commissioned a new art form in itself, comprehensive animal portraiture in precious materials. And the success of the Sandringham Commission transformed how European royalty thought about art collecting. Suddenly, commissioning decorative art objects became as prestigious, if not more, than acquiring old master paintings. Alexandra had proven that contemporary craftsmanship could be just as valuable as historical artifacts, if not more in some cases. Other royals began competing to commission their own elaborate Fabergé pieces. The demand itself became so intense that Fabergé had to expand his workshops and establish new branches across Europe. Alexandra had accidentally created a luxury goods arms race. But Alexandra's influence extended beyond just creating market demand. She became recognized as one of Europe's foremost connoisseurs of decorative arts. Other collectors sought her advice, artists competed for her patronage, and her taste began influencing artistic trends across the entire continent. The irony is that Alexandra never intended to become an art historical figure. She simply just loved collecting beautiful things and had the means to acquire them for herself. But her willingness to support contemporary craftsmen rather than just collecting established masters helped create new artistic traditions still sometimes seen today. World War I and the Russian Revolution ended the golden age of Fabergé, but Alexandra's collection survived. The Sandringham Commission pieces became some of the most treasured objects in the royal collection, representing not just artistic achievement, but a lost world of imperial luxury. Alexandra lived until 1925, long enough to see the world she had helped define disappear forever. The era of commissioning entire menageries from master craftsmen was over, but the objects she had commissioned became increasingly precious as remnants of an extraordinary cultural movement. Today, Queen Alexandra's Fabergé collection is considered one of the finest assemblages of decorative art in the entire world. The Royal Collection Trust, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and museums worldwide display pieces that this remarkable woman commissioned and collected. Art historians now recognize Alexandra as a pivotal figure in the development of modern art collecting. She demonstrated that royal patronage could support living artists, not just preserve historical works. Her collecting philosophy influenced how museums and private collectors approach contemporary art. The Sandringham commission pieces are worth tens of millions of pounds today, but their cultural value is incalculable. They represent a unique collaboration between British royal patronage and Russian artistic genius, creating objects that are simultaneously historical artifacts and timeless works of art. But perhaps most remarkably, Alexandra's collection continues to inspire new generations of artists and collectors. Contemporary craftsmen study Fabergé techniques preserved in her commissions. Modern collectors use her acquisition strategies as models for building coherent, museum-quality collections. Alexandra's transformation from an aristocratically poor Danish princess to one of history's most important art patrons proves that cultural legacy isn't just about inherited wealth. It's about vision, passion, and the courage to support artistic excellence. So what can we learn today from Queen Alexandra's extraordinary collecting journey? First, that true cultural impact often comes from supporting living artists rather than just acquiring established treasures. Alexandra's willingness to commission new works created artistic history. And second is that personal passion, when combined with resources and vision, can create lasting cultural benefits for everyone to enjoy. Alexandra collected for her own pleasure, but her choices created treasures that millions of people continue to enjoy today. And finally, that the most lasting legacies are often the most personal ones. You see, Alexandra didn't set out to make art history. She just wanted beautiful objects around her. But her genuine love of craftsmanship and quality created a collection that has outlasted literal empires. Today, when you visit a museum and see a Fabergé animal sculpture, you're looking at more than just a beautiful object. You're seeing the result of one woman's transformation from modest Danish princess to cultural patron, and her belief that contemporary art could be just as valuable, if not more so, than ancient treasures. Queen Alexandra proved that sometimes the best way to honor the past is to boldly and proudly support the present. Her legacy reminds us that true cultural leadership means recognizing artistic greatness in your own time and not just preserving it from ages past. What do you think, though? Was Queen Alexandra a visionary patron who created lasting cultural treasures? Or was she simply a wealthy woman with expensive taste who got lucky with history? And more importantly, if you had unlimited resources, would you commission your own royal menagerie? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into royal collecting and cultural patronage, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of how personal passions created lasting historical legacies. Next time we'll explore another tale of royal collecting or crimes. But remember, behind every crown lies a crime waiting to be uncovered, and sometimes the most beautiful palaces hide the ugliest secrets.